scars, stitches, concussion, paralysis. Play was suspended, and she went flying across the still dewy grass. Adrenaline seemed to heighten all her senses, taking her out of herself, so she was aware of how she looked. She was equally aware of the frumpy, overweight blonde mother who commented to a washed-out redhead, "Can you believe she's wearing Todd's loafers and Prada slacks to a kid's soccer game?" But she wasn't the kind to go around in yoga pants and tracksuits, although she actually practiced yoga and ran every morning. Scott was all right, thank God. So was the other boy. Their egos were more bruised than their bodies, so they staggered around a bit, exaggerating their injuries for the benefit of their teammates. It was only polite to introduce herself to the father, to stick out her hand and say, "Heloise Lewis." "Bill Carroll," he said. "Eloise?" "Heloise, as in hints from." He shook her hand. She had recognized him the moment he said his name, for he was a credit card customer, William F. Carroll. He had needed a second more, but then he knew her as Jane Smith. Not terribly original, but it did the job. Someone had to be named Jane Smith, and it was so bogusly fake that it seemed more real as a result. "Heloise," he repeated. "Well, it's very nice to meet you, Heloise. Your boy go to Dunwood?" His vowels were round with fake sincerity, a bad sign. Most of her regulars were adequate liars. They had to be to juggle the compartmentalized lives they had created for themselves. And she was a superb liar. Bill Carroll wasn't even adequate. "We live in Turner's Grove, but he goes to private school. Do you live divorced?" he said briefly. "Weekend warrior, driving up from D.C. every other Saturday expressly for this tedium." That explained everything. She hadn't screwed up. Her system simply wasn't as foolproof as she thought. Before Heloise's company took on a new client, she always did a thorough background check, looking up vehicle registrations, tracking down the home addresses. And if no home address could be found, she refused the job. A man who lived in her zip code, or even a contiguous one, was rejected out of hand, although she might assign him to one of her associates. She hadn't factored in divorce. Perhaps that was an oversight that only the never-married could make. "Nice to meet you," she said. "Nice to meet you," he smirked. This was trouble. What kind of trouble she wasn't sure yet, but definitely trouble. When Heloise decided to move to the suburbs shortly after Scott was born, it had seemed practical and smart, even mainstream. Wasn't that what every parent did? She hadn't anticipated how odd it was for a single woman to buy a house on one of the best cul-de-sacs in one of the best subdivisions in Anne Arundel County, the kind of houses that newly single mothers usually sold post-divorce because they couldn't afford to buy out the husband's 50% stake in the equity. She had chosen the house for the land, almost an acre, which afforded the most privacy, never thinking of the price. Then she enrolled Scott in private school, another flag. What was the point of moving here if one could afford private school? The neighbors had begun to gossip almost immediately, and their speculation inspired the backstory she needed. A widow, yes. A terrible accident, one of which she still could not speak. She was grateful for her late husband's pragmatism and foresight when it came to insurance, but she'd rather have him, of course. "Of course," her new confidants echoed back, although some seemed less than convinced. She could almost see their brains working it through. If I could lose the husband and keep the house, it wouldn't be so bad. It was the brass ring of divorced life in this cul-de-sac, losing the husband and keeping the house. The Dunwood School District was less desirable and therefore less pricey, which explained how Bill Carroll's ex maintained her life there. Heloise simply hadn't counted on the scrutiny her personal life would attract. She had counted on her ability to construct a story about her work that would quickly stupefy anyone who asked, not that many of these stay-at-home mothers seemed curious about work. "I'm a lobbyist," she said. "The Women's Full Employment Network. I work in Annapolis, Baltimore, and D.C. as necessary.